Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Zambian Voices, an online conversation that highlights Zambian leaders who are working to improve the standard and well-being of their fellow citizens. Over the past several months, it has been my deep and wonderful pleasure to speak to change makers across the country to share information and insights on a wide range of issues, including education, entrepreneurship, health, democracy and human rights, and governance initiatives. As you all know, Zambia's national elections are approaching in August of next year. Election season is always an exciting time, as we know in the United States as well. You might have heard, but we in the United States are having our presidential election in less than 3 weeks. Here in Zambia, the important thing for all Zambians to focus on is that all of you must register to vote now in order to be able to vote next August for president. If you don't register to vote during these next 2 months, when nationwide registration is taking place, you won't be able to vote. So a new voter registry is being compiled and all persons must register anew. So just because you did so in the past, that's not enough. So please, 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 all of you who are listening, make sure you register and make sure you tell your family members, friends, and colleagues. You have to pass the word and make sure everyone is aware. We need to be the ambassadors for the election. This registration process requires participation from all parts of society, including government, the media, civil society organizations, and others. Today, I'm very excited to have on the program 3 individuals representing civil society organizations who are working hard to ensure that Zambia's voter registration process is inclusive and broad-based. I'd like to welcome Harriet Chibuta, Executive Director for Young Women in Action. And I'd also like to welcome Justin Bbakali, the Executive Director for the Zambia Federation of Disability Organizations, and Mutambas, who is the Program Manager for the group as well. So I'd like to welcome all of you, Justin, Mishak, and Harriet. It's a pleasure to have you join us today.
Thank you so much. We are excited to be part of this.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thanks. Now, Justin, Zambia's voter registration period begins on October 28th. And although online pre-registration, it's already underway. Could you describe for our audience what your organization is doing to promote the participation of people with disabilities in the electoral process generally, in particular about voter registration?
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe to start with, I'll start by explaining what ZAFOD is. ZAFOD is an umbrella organization mandated to promote, protect the rights and inherent human rights for persons with disabilities in Zambia. It is a non-governmental organization. Currently, ZAFOD has 15 affiliates representing all types of disabilities. What are we doing to ensure that persons with disabilities are able to participate in the electoral process? As ZAFOD, we are carrying out a program which is actually meant to increase the participation of persons with disabilities in political and electoral process. So what we have been doing is that we have been doing a lot of advocacy work in the area of including persons with disabilities to participate in the electoral process, so that the electoral process is inclusive of persons with disabilities. So we've been working with different stakeholders. We've been working with Electoral Commission of Zambia to ensure that the electoral process is inclusive. You might be aware that in 2011, ZAFOD sued the Electoral Commission of Zambia for discriminating persons with disabilities in the electoral process. And ZAFOD won this case. And the Electoral Commission of Zambia was actually ordered to provide for persons with disabilities in terms of providing electoral materials which are disability friendly, in terms of access, in terms of sign language interpretation, and also in terms of the general participation of persons with disabilities in the electoral process. That is in terms of persons with disabilities participating in the decision-making organs of the Electoral Commission, like voter education committees, conflict resolution committees, so that all their issues are also included. Maybe my colleague, you also want to add for the same.
Yes, just in addition to what my colleague has shared, the other aspect of our outreach program on increasing the participation of persons with disabilities in political life and the electoral process is engagement with political parties in Zambia. We started with the major political parties, the PF, the United Party for National Development, the MMD, and the Patriotic Front. So we have been engaging them to look at, first of all, their document, how disability friendly are their manifestos and policies and constitutions. And then going further to look at their party structures, how disability inclusive and friendly are their party structures. Then we also look at why are they not adopting persons with disabilities as candidates, and what should they do as political parties to embrace inclusion of persons with disabilities. Because we realize that in Zambia, there is a lot of systemic exclusion of persons with disabilities in every aspect of public life. And so we are promoting systemic inclusion by engaging such strategic partners like political parties to ensure that they begin to address inclusion of persons with disabilities in the political processes.
Maybe just to add on, we have also actually engaged on vigorous media campaigns where we are actually sensitizing the public on the importance of including persons with disabilities in the political and public life. So we've been holding a lot of radio programs, TV programs on a number of issues that affect the participation of persons with disabilities in the electoral process. And we are actually hoping and trusting that probably come 2021, we would want to see actually persons with disabilities not only participating as voters, but also to be elected as leaders.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Justin and Mishek, and appreciate all that you're doing. Harriet, let me ask you, the ECZ recently launched the online voter pre-registration process. And, you know, I wonder if you could tell us, why is online registration appealing and convenient to young voters, and also perhaps to young women as well?
All right, thank you very much for that question. So maybe I should actually rephrase, maybe I can start by rephrasing your question or statement. I think the e-voter pre-registration has a mixture of feelings. So young people, young women also in particular, have mixed feelings about it. So it's a yes and no kind of, you know, the feelings that we have. It's a yes because we all know that it's a great initiative. First of all, it's going to lessen the queues, lessen the time spent on the queues, and nobody obviously wants to spend the entire day trying to register as a voter. And also, people can do it in the comfort of their home. So young people are very happy about it, and very, you know, acceptant to it. However, there's also a no to it. We all know that Zambia's unemployment rate is very high, and this affects young people When we talk about young people here, we're referring to everybody under the age of 35 according to our constitution. And when you talk of unemployment, if people are unemployed, the young people are unemployed, they don't have resources for various needs. So the e-platform, the e-pre-voter registration platform requires somebody to have data. It requires somebody to have a smartphone, and it also requires somebody to actually know how to use a smartphone. So you'll find that here in the city, in Lusaka, people may have access to the smartphones, but then they do not have access, the young people do not have access to the internet data bundles that they need to carry out the process and register and take the pictures during the process. And also, even here in the city, some young people do not have the smartphones. So the e-registration I think has more negatives than positives, according to us, the young people. So I've just talked about Lusaka. Now imagine somebody in Shangombo, somebody in Lundazi, people with intermittent internet connections, with no technological know-how whatsoever, people that have never used a smartphone before. So there are so many negatives to it than positives, really. Otherwise, if we the young people had the resources and knowledge or skills to operate smartphones, you know, it would be I think it would be a very, very progressive direction to take. And then maybe I should also mention that when you talk about technological know-how, we have seen people here in Lusaka. We do implement activities where we need young people to use smartphones, but then they do not have the smartphone. And in addition, not everybody knows how to speak English. Not everybody can read. And I think we have forgotten the young people in the rural areas. So I think the fact that there is no platform where you can access or register in Tonga, in Nyanja, in Chichewa, it's really a no for most of the young people. So I think overall, it leans more to a no than a yes.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Harriet. I appreciate you sharing your thoughts on that. It's interesting, you know, we think about the US and our big elections now too, and especially in the time of COVID. I think it's interesting if there can be ways to have some people vote early, like we have in the US, or some people pre-register. Maybe it can help some, you know, like you said, with the day of the voting. It won't help everybody, but maybe help the numbers overall. So thank you. Justin and Mishek, the physical voter registration process requires those who pre-registered online to then physically present themselves to officials. How is your organization working to promote this process to your members?
Yes, on the physical voter registration, that requires that there's a pre-registration, then a presentation in a physical sense to the officials. First of all, we are doing sensitization through the radio programs, encouraging our members to register as voters, and also to encourage them to present themselves to the nearest registration points, and when it's time to vote, of course, to the nearest polling stations. That's so that it's easier for them at the time of voting to go and cast their vote. But also because our constituency is made up of persons with disabilities, some who have visual impairment, some who have hard of hearing, yeah, others are on wheelchairs and crutches, so covering distances. So there are all these dynamics within our membership, and so we are engaging ECZ. We have been monitoring the IT, how they are improving the online platform, the technical part of the system, the platform itself, to accommodate those with disabilities. For example, in setting in audio facilities, yeah, and other disability-friendly facilities on the system that will enable our members to find it easy to register online and then they can physically present themselves to complete the process.
Maybe just in addition to what Mr. Mutamba has said, we have also been trying to engage the Electoral Commission to come up with the targeted voter registration, where actually they could target probably our constituents to maybe moving into their localities so that they are able to capture persons with disabilities so that they do not need to travel long distances to points of registration. Then we have also been trying to see if we could actually access voter registration schedules so that we are able to share with our affiliate members to say on such a day, there will be voter registration, mobile voter registration in your area. Can you mobilize your membership so that they are able to register? And then also one of the things that we thought could actually be very good for persons with abilities probably would have been a situation where apart from just registering online, probably this could be just a one-off thing. Instead of people they do the online, then they were supposed to have been probably maybe establishing centers where persons with abilities could actually access these cards without necessarily traveling a long distance.
Great. Well, thank you. Harriet, as we discussed earlier, it's required of all adult citizens in Zambia that they register to vote in the upcoming registration process, which goes from October 28th, it starts in just about 2 weeks, and then runs through the end of November. You know, what can we do to help publicize the message and encourage all Zambians to vote or to register? And what do you think we can do, especially to amplify the voices for young people and young women in particular to participate?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. So in order to publicize the process more, I believe more adverts on social media platforms is very key. Young people, we all know that young people are on social media, they're on Facebook, they're on Twitter, Instagram, you know, so there's need for ECZ and publicize this as much as possible on all social media. I think that would work well is IEC might have these in local languages as well, because as I said, everyone out there in the village can read, publicize the information. Another thing that we can do is rural areas. I know for a fact that rural communities listen to the local radio stations. So that's a venture that we can really capitalize on in their local languages, talk about it, take them through, you know, the whole process. And also I think this sector is usually neglected, but I think we need to engage the church. Zambia being a Christian nation obviously means that most of the population is Christian. So there's need to engage, and everybody goes to church. Most of the young people are found in church. There are youth meetings. Some young people are already married. They undergo counseling, marriage meetings. You know, there are different meetings that happen in the church. So there's need to engage the church to just publicize, and pastors, preachers, deacons to just talk about these things. And also engaging traditional leaders. So in every space where we know young people are found, there are meetings in the villages, there are meetings in our communities, the ward development committees in different areas. We should engage, you know, leaders at community level, the traditional leaders or community leaders, so that in every space that we are found, that they are found, and there are young people there, there are young women there, and there's just people in general. The e-learning, pre-registration is, publicized or talked about. Television is also another one. We can have discussions on TV, and these can be informal discussions, something that a young person in Shangombo can understand, someone in Choma, can easily pick up. So you have young people talking about this and taking step-by-step conversations about the process altogether. We can also engage higher learning institutions through the associations where the young people are found. So I think the idea really is to think about where to find the young people, where are these young women, where are these young people generally, and target those spaces, publicize the information in those areas. And then I also think there's need to establish e-registration centers in the communities. I did speak to the fact that we're a poor nation. Young people do not have resources. Unemployment rates are, very high. So there's literally nowhere where the young people are going to get the resources to buy the internet data bundles to take them through the process. So I feel that what ECZ, as well as other stakeholders, can embark on is just opening up centers or booths. Though we have Airtel and MTN and Zona everywhere around, we can have something similar where somebody who is trained in e-registering can be there and young people can access, and it should be free, not at a fee, because I have spoken to the fact that we do not have money. So if we want to engage the young people, let it be free. If we want the young people to register, it should be free, it should be accessible. So I think it would be a very great idea to also think about the local structures that are already in existence. So local offices, offices like Young Women in Action, for instance, as well. So it's important to identify civil society, the offices, government offices in the different spaces to target and use as centers where young people in those areas can go to for free and be helped to register. I actually finished my pre-registration days ago. And, it's a really, I wouldn't say it's a cumbersome process, but then it's quite tedious for somebody who doesn't know how to use a smartphone, somebody who has intermittent internet connections. So there's parts where you take pictures of your NRC, a picture of yourself holding your NRC. So, all those steps, and imagine somebody who really has no experience with using internet, they have no money, then we're not going to have anybody registering. So I think those are some of the strategies we can use. Also using door-to-door registration, if it happens that the centers where young people can go for free, where people in general really can go for free and register and be helped to register, perhaps we could also engage young people to move door to door and just register the people that are going to vote next year. So you can have somebody with a tablet, moving from one house to another, help somebody take their details, the process would be easier that way. And then I think Mr. Mutamba did mention the inclusion of audio. I think that's a very, very cardinal aspect. So I mentioned that many people cannot understand English or read, but then there are also people, even if it's in their local language, they cannot read. So there's need for audio where the instructions, okay, this is the first, stage, some automated, if I must put it that way, an automated voice that takes you through from point A all the way to the end. In local languages, probably the 7 largest or common languages in the country, or predominant languages in each and every area of the country. And then lastly, another aspect another strategy that can work is to engage civil society organizations like Young Women in Action, ZAFOD, and many other stakeholders, many other NGOs, to just help with the voter registration, the online voter registration. There are many movements, many young people. The young people have the energy. So as long as we engage them and, give them the necessary resources, definitely this is going to be a success. And then lastly, I think there's need for international NGOs, the private sector, embassies like yours, and high commissions to just really engage with the young people meaningfully. I mean, right now we're having a conversation on what can work. I think what is sad is we have a conversation like this, and you know, after the meeting or after the conversation, we post it on social media, everybody's happy, yes, it was a very good discussion, but then what are you doing about it after that? You know, there's need for these stakeholders that I have mentioned to identify the youth-led organizations like Young Men in Action and others, many other organizations, to just really take this to another level, engage them. We have the energy, we have the human resource. The young people do want to participate in the electoral process and governance issues altogether, but then it's just that they're not given the resources. We do not have the resources, the platforms. So I think it's very cardinal that NGOs, embassies, the private sector, everybody just plays a role and engages the young people meaningfully, and not just in conversations, but actually take out resources and say, you know what, Harriet, we liked 3 of your solutions. Here is some money, actually execute these. I think that would really work.
Great. Well, thank you, Harriet. I appreciate all those wide range of good ideas. Justin, what accommodations are needed to assist people with disabilities to be able to register to vote starting on October 28th when registration kicks off? I think your microphone might not be on. If you could turn your microphone on.
Yes.
Sorry about that. Probably what we would want to see is actually the Electoral Commission of Zambia to exercise what we call reasonable accommodation for persons with disabilities. We would want to see the Electoral Commission of Zambia providing the issue of access to the voter registration centers, where these places should be easily be accessible to persons with disabilities, and it should be within their areas of residence, so that persons with disabilities, they do not need to travel long distance. The other thing that we would want to see is the use of sign language. If the Electoral Commission of Zambia could actually employ professional sign language interpreters that will be able to attend to people with hearing aids. And then the other thing that we'd want to see is the inclusion of persons with disabilities as ECZ members of staff who are persons with disabilities. Because if they are included, I'm sure their colleagues will be able to learn 1 or 2 things, and they will be able to participate in the Electoral Commission. Maybe I'll leave also my colleague to add.
In addition, we are looking at persons with disabilities often excluded in these processes. So one important way to provide reasonable accommodation is to ensure that persons with disabilities are saved earlier than other potential voters at registration centers, even during voting, so that persons with disabilities can be accommodated that reasonable, reasonable space. The reason is we have in our constituencies persons with albinism who do not need to stand long in the sun because of the sensitivity of the skin. So when such ones arrive at the voter registration center or at a polling station, and they find reasonable attention given to them that speeds up the process of registration, the process of voting, I think we would be sending a very important, encouraging message to such ones that we need you in this process. Your vote counts, and that when you come to participate, we would provide this reasonable space for you to effectively register and vote.
The other thing probably that we would want to see is where all the voter registration adverts, they need to be put in sign language, and also the posters, they need to be translated into Braille so that people with visual impairment, they should be able to read these posters and information without any problems.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate those insights. Harriet, can you say a little bit more about why it's important for young people in particular, young women especially, to participate in politics and governance, kind of generally? And how are you working with, you know, women in action, young women in action, to kind of help foster that and encourage young women?
Okay. So I will start by just talking about what we're doing as Young Men in Action with regards to increasing young women's participation in governance and political processes. We have been we embarked on many projects, about 3 projects that just aim to promote young women's participation in governance structures, political leadership, so on and so forth. So we since January this year, we have been implementing the projects in Southern Province in Mazabuka, here in Lusaka, in Western Province in Mongu. We're moving into Kabwe, the Copper Belt in Chungola, as well as Lundazi and Chipata on the east. So what we're doing is working with political parties, leaders from various political parties, to just see how they can gender mainstream the adoption, especially. Young women are interested in taking part in governance and political leadership. They are showing their interest. It's just about adoption, really. What are the political parties doing about it? So we've been engaging them in dialogues. We have had dialogue sessions in Southern Province. We recently had one in Western Province, here in Lusaka, on the east, as well as moving into Central and the Copper Belt. So we're having many dialogue sessions with political parties. And the political parties we're working with, I must mention, are the PF, the Patriotic Front, the United UPND, the MMD, the Socialist Party. We're working with FDD, we're working with NAREP, we're working with DP as well. So we're working with many political parties to also just ensure that the young women remain, in solidarity with one another, because their agenda really is to increase young women's participation and representation in the political spheres. So we talk about political violence, how they should stand together and ensure that we actually achieve our agenda. And then we also, so we're working with the young women aspiring candidates in the different towns that I have mentioned. So far, we're working with 75. So you can tell already that the young women are there. They do want to take up leadership in the political spaces. It's just about accepting what is society doing about it to ensure that these young people actually take the space and work and prove to the world that we really can bring development to the country. So that's basically what we're doing as Young Women in Action around increasing young women's participation in leadership, political leadership and governance structures. And why it's important that we actually do this is it enhances democracy. Currently 36.7%, I think, 36.7% of Zambia's population is people between 15 and 35, right? And when we talk about democracy, we're talking about the rule by the people. And if the majority are not represented, they're not ruling, then really do we have democracy? So it's important that young people are included, the young women especially, that they're included in these governance structures to ensure that really Zambia is enjoying the democracy. And another thing is that the young people are underrepresented. So issues and needs for the young women, the young people generally, are not primary, they're always secondary. Oh, okay, yes, so the young women are now talking about period poverty. The young women are talking about sexual reproductive health needs and accessibility, taking up leadership. But then, you know, why are the young women complaining? It's because they don't have representatives in these governance structures that can actually push their agendas. So there's need to enhance democracy because the young people are the majority. There's need for young people to be in leadership positions in these structures so that they can represent other young women, represent other young people, and ensure that their needs are met. And also, it's, I think we all know the saying that nothing for us without us. So that's really, you know, democracy. You cannot be talking about how Zambia is inclusive and how Zambia is is leaving no one behind when you're not including the young women. You're not including the young people who are the majority of the population. So really, I think that's the major one. And then I think the last comment, or why young people should be involved, should take part in leadership, in political leadership, especially the young women, is the fact that they are a reservoir of untapped talents and ideas. I think from time immemorial, leadership in Zambia has always been left to the men, and not just the men generally, but then the older men. So even the young men are left out. Currently, if you check the local government positions, the MP level, there's, you know, the young people are not represented. So there's need for young people to be represented in these spaces. There's need to actually tap into that knowledge, the talents, the ideas that the young people have that are not being utilized for sustainable development. I believe with all of my heart that the young people have the solutions to many of society's problems. And it's just about society's acceptance. So it's time that young people, society rather, accepted that young people are able, young people are capable, and they have the knowledge, we have the skills. Young people are doing many, you know, brilliant things out there in society. It's just about the platform. So this is why we're working towards increasing young women's participation in leadership, political leadership to be precise, and also generally the young people. We are highly underrepresented, and it's about time that the young people took up their space. It's about time that we held hands together and just move together and take this country to another level.
Great. Well, thank you, Harriet. I appreciate that very much. You know, I think the issue that you highlight is a really important one for my family in my country as well. My daughter, who's 23, and my son, who's 24, are actually involved working in political campaigns in the US. So I would salute the importance of how important it is for young people to get involved in politics and in public life. So good luck to all of you on that. As we wrap up, I want to just give you all a comment or a chance to make a last comment. First off, to Justin and Mishek, do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to leave with our online audience?
And yes, indeed, David, our wrap-up comments is a passionate appeal to the Electoral Commission of Zambia. We feel that they are a very strategic partner in ensuring that persons with disabilities have a meaningful and full participation in the electoral process. They have barriers that need to be dismantled. And this is why the Electoral Commission of Zambia was sued in 2011, because we perceive that if the barriers are dismantled, it will make a huge impact, positive impact on the participation of persons with disabilities in the electoral process, as voter educators, as voter polling officers, as voters themselves. Yeah, there is a lot, a shopping list actually of what the electoral system of Zambia needs to do, the Electoral Commission of Zambia needs to do to, you know, encourage persons with disabilities to participate in the electoral process. And we believe that persons with disabilities are the most marginalized group of citizens in Zambia. And yet they have an inherent right to, you know, to vote their representatives or to be voted into power. And as Harriet mentioned, if they are not participating in the democratic dispensation of the country, they are basically not participating in the development process. They are not independent. Yeah, and they're relegated to objects of medical care sympathy by the so-called able-bodied people, and it's unacceptable. Having been lived in a growing democracy for 55 years now, surely we could do better as a country to be inclusive and to appreciate that disability is just the diversity in human society and not a case from God as it is believed in Africa.
Okay, just to add on to what Mr. Mutamba has said, yes, we would want the Electoral Commission of Zambia really to take a lead and level the playing field. But also, in addition, as ZAFOD, we are dealing with issues to do with the attitude. And usually attitude is very difficult to change. Therefore, we would want to make an earnest appeal to the embassies, donors, to support this noble cause. Because actually what we are doing currently, we might be doing it in very limited localities. We would want actually to roll out this program countrywide so that we are able to reach out to all persons with disabilities, especially those that are rural-based. Because this information that we've been giving out on radio to some of our colleagues are unable actually to get it because they might not have these facilities. So we really want to make an earnest appeal, like what Harriet said, that the international partners, the businessmen, the embassies, and other stakeholders to come on board and see what they can do to ensure that the inherent human rights for persons with disabilities are realized and actualized. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you both very much. And thank you for all you do to increase access and opportunity and awareness and participation for people with disabilities. And the abilities that you bring in a democracy are very important. So thank you for all you do. Harriet, I want to give you a chance to have the last word as well. Over to you.
All right, thank you. So I think my last words would be, young people, let's keep the momentum. It's our time to take up the space. It's our time to take the leadership by, taking political leadership by the horn and just ride it and take this country to another level. And also remember that once you are successful with online registration, help another person out. Let's be a sister's keeper. The future of this country is in our hands. So let us all contribute effectively so that everybody registers and Zambia is, moves to better heights in the coming future.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Harriet, and thank you for all you do to empower young women and encourage the participation here in public life and political life. And I like what you said. We need to be our sister's keeper, and we need to be our brother's keeper, and that's an important part of what we do. So thank you all three for joining us today. And I just want to remind our viewers, please get out there and register to vote. It's so critically important to participate in your democracy here in Zambia. And as Harriet mentioned, you can participate in the online pre-registration if you're able to. But, get out there and pre-register if you can, encourage others to do it, and register to vote, because ultimately we as citizens need to express our voices and participate in order to